Before you scroll past this, you need to stop and pay close attention, because what happened inside the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, Texas during SmackDown was only half the story, and the half that nobody is talking about, the half that unfolded in the shadows after the cameras stopped rolling and the crowd went home, is the moment that is going to reshape the entire landscape of the Bloodline for the foreseeable future. The Samoan werewolf has made his choice. Roman Reigns just inherited the most dangerous weapon he has ever had in his corner, and nothing about this rivalry is going to look the same ever again. Welcome to Wrestling Juice, and if you have been following the Bloodline saga for any length of time, buckle up, because we are about to go deep. To truly appreciate the magnitude of what happened after SmackDown went off the air, you have to understand the environment that was already building inside that arena from the moment the show began. This was the first SmackDown following WrestleMania 42, and the energy in Fort Worth was unlike anything a post-Mania episode of SmackDown has produced in years. Jacob Fatu wasted absolutely no time. He walked out to that ring and called out Roman Reigns directly, challenging the new World Heavyweight Champion to step through those ropes and see for himself whether the Samoan werewolf was ready to carry a title around his waist. It was the kind of opening statement that lets you know immediately that the next few months of television are going to be must-see, and the arena responded accordingly. But before Reigns could answer, before any kind of official response could be made, the Usos materialized on that stage, and they did not come with aggression. They came with a message, and more importantly, an invitation. Jimmy and Jay stood out there and warned Jacob about pointing his energy in the direction of the tribal chief. They told him that going after Roman Reigns is not a path, it is a dead end, and that the only logical move for someone with Jacob Fatu's gifts and bloodline was to stand alongside family rather than against it. It was a diplomatic appeal wrapped in the language of loyalty, and for a brief moment, it genuinely felt like Jacob might actually be listening. And then Solo Sikoa arrived with the MFTs, and everything that had been simmering beneath the surface of this show came bubbling violently to the top. Solo did not come to watch from the sidelines. He wanted Jacob Fatu too, and he made that clear immediately, trying to pitch the idea that Fatu would need an army if he was ever going to have a realistic chance of taking the title from Roman Reigns. The tension between these two factions, the original Bloodline operating under Roman Reigns and the MFTs operating under Solo Sikoa, had been building for weeks, and you could feel the weight of all of it pressing down on that moment in Fort Worth. But it was Tama Tonga who finally struck the match. Growing visibly impatient with the entire back and forth, Tama turned to Solo and dismissed Jacob Fatu entirely, suggesting out loud that they were wasting their time on a man who could not even beat Solo Sikoa, let alone the World Heavyweight Champion. He said it with contempt, with the kind of casual dismissal that you only deliver when you genuinely do not believe the other person poses a threat, and in doing so, he made the single most expensive mistake of his night. Jacob Fatu did not think about it. He did not pause or calculate or measure his response. He superkicked Tama Tonga directly in the face, pivoted to Solo Sikoa, and accepted the challenge that had been hanging in the air since the moment they walked out. He would face Solo later that evening in the main event, and the entire arena understood that whatever happened in that match was going to mean something far beyond a television result. The match itself delivered everything you could have hoped for and then some. It was a hard, physical, emotionally charged war between two men who have a complicated history and a mutual understanding of exactly how dangerous the other one truly is. In the end, Jacob Fatu won clean, landing the moonsault for the pinfall victory, and that should have been the exclamation point on a dominant night. But the MFTs had no intention of letting the evening end there. They swarmed the ring the moment the bell rang, outnumbering Fatu and attempting to use their advantage to send a message of their own. It did not work. Jacob Fatu dismantled every single one of them by himself, picking up a steel chair and using it with the kind of controlled fury that makes you realize the word dangerous does not quite cover what this man is capable of. He put Tonga lower through the announce table, and when the chaos finally settled, he stood alone in the center of that ring while the entire arena chanted his name, and the Usos watched from the ramp without lifting a single finger to help or interfere. That image, Jacob Fatu surrounded by the wreckage of the MFTs while the Usos looked on in silence, was one of the most telling visuals that SmackDown has produced in a very long time. But as I mentioned at the very top of this, what happened inside the arena was only the first chapter of the night. After the show went off the air, after the production crew began breaking down equipment, and the last of the audience filed out into the Texas night, Jacob Fatu made his way into the backstage corridor. And waiting for him there, away from cameras, away from the chaos, away from Solo and the MFTs and the noise of the crowd, were Jimmy and Jay Uso. Just the three of them, alone in that quiet stretch of hallway, no performance required, no audience to play to, just blood and history and a decision that needed to be made. The Usos had been tasked by Roman Reigns himself with talking sense into Jacob Fatu. On the Raw following Mania, Reigns had looked at his cousins as they walked up the ramp and told them directly to handle it. On SmackDown, Jay had stood out in that ring and appealed to Jacob in front of the whole world, choosing the language of family over the language of competition. And now, in the most private setting imaginable, the conversation that had been building for weeks finally happened. What makes this moment so compelling, and what has been occupying my thoughts ever since the reports started coming through, is who Jacob Fatu is as a character, and what it means for a man like him to say what he reportedly said in that corridor. This is not a man who has ever shown any interest in alignment or alliance. He does not ask for help. He does not operate within structures or follow someone else's lead. He is feral in the most captivating possible way, a force of nature who trusts his own instincts above everything else. And yet, standing in that backstage hallway with his cousins, the men who share his blood and have fought in more wars under that Bloodline banner than almost anyone else in WWE, something shifted. According to people who were present, Jacob looked at Jimmy and Jay and told them plainly that he was not joining anyone and he was not about to follow anyone's orders. But then he said something that changed the entire temperature of the conversation. He told them that when the time comes, he will stand with family. And in those few words, the entire dynamic of the Bloodline story moved into territory it has never occupied before. The wrestling community is already working through what this means on every level, and the conversations are fascinating. Some fans are pointing to this as one of the most significant moments in Bloodline history since Jey Uso delivered his emotional speech years ago. The kind of character beat that recontextualizes everything that came before it and opens up an enormous amount of creative possibility for everything that follows. Others are taking a more cautious approach, pointing out that Jacob Fatu saying he will stand with family when the time comes is not the same as him pledging loyalty to Roman Reigns, and that the ambiguity of that commitment could easily become a source of conflict further down the road. And I think both of those readings have real merit, because the beauty of what this storyline has set up is that Jacob Fatu has not surrendered anything. He has not bent the knee. He has not acknowledged Roman Reigns as his tribal chief. He has simply acknowledged that blood means something, and that when a moment of genuine consequence arrives, he will be on the right side of it. What this means for Backlash is the question that every fan is currently wrestling with, and it is the right question to be asking. Jacob Fatu challenged Roman Reigns for the World Heavyweight Championship on Raw after Mania, and Reigns told him to take a week and really think about whether he wanted the weight of that responsibility. At the time, it felt like Roman was planting a seed of doubt, trying to slow Jacob down by making the championship feel like a burden rather than a prize. But after everything that happened in Fort Worth, after Jacob destroyed the MFTs alone and then had that private conversation with the Usos, the landscape looks very different. Is Fatu still pursuing that championship match at Backlash? Has the alliance with the Usos changed his calculus in any way? And what happens to Solo Sikoa and the MFTs now that the man they tried to recruit has instead become their most immediate threat? These are not small questions, and the answers are going to define the next several months of SmackDown storytelling in a fundamental way. What I keep coming back to is this. Roman Reigns, whether intentionally or not, may have just gained an ally who is more valuable than anyone currently in his orbit, precisely because Jacob Fatu refuses to be controlled. A loyal soldier is useful, but a wild and unpredictable force of nature who simply agrees to show up for family when it matters most is something else entirely. That is not a weapon you aim, that is a weapon you stand back and let loose, and Solo Sikoa and the MFTs are about to find out exactly what that means for them going forward. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now, because I genuinely want to know where you stand on all of this. Do you think Jacob Fatu is still headed for a championship match against Roman Reigns at Backlash, or has everything that happened in Fort Worth redirected this story somewhere none of us are expecting? And what do you see happening to Solo Sikoa and the MFTs now that the werewolf has turned against them? Let me know below, hit that like button if this breakdown gave you something to think about, and make sure you are subscribed to Wrestling Juice, because the Bloodline saga is moving faster than anyone anticipated, and you do not want to be catching up when everyone else already knows what is coming next.